Pierre Poilievre is calling on Mark Carney to sell his investments and answer for misleading Canadians about conflicts of interest during the election after an ethics disclosure revealed over 100 such cases.
A prominent Toronto university is remaining silent after an external Marxist-Leninist revolutionary group called for a Soviet-style revolution and dictatorship on its campus.
Police revealed there was no evidence that a swarming attack in Oshawa, Ontario was hate-motivated, debunking claims of, quote, Islamophobia. Hello Canada, it's Tuesday, July 15th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Cosmin, Dzsurdzsa.
And I'm Geoff Knight.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is calling on Prime Minister Mark Carney to sell off his assets and explain why he misled Canadians about potential conflicts of interest, following an ethics disclosure revealing a record number of investments from which he must recuse himself. The federal ethics disclosure released Friday shows that Carney holds 103 assets that pose potential conflicts, an unprecedented number for a sitting prime minister. During the election campaign, Carney repeatedly claimed he had no such conflicts. Poilievre accused Carney of misleading the public and demanded the prime minister place all of his assets into a completely blind arrangement. Poilievre said in Ottawa Monday, quote, "That is the spirit of a blind trust. A blind trust is meant to be something that the owner does not know anything about. That's what it means to be blind of the assets. But right now, Mr. Carney is clearly not blind of what he holds because even we know what he holds due to his disclosure, and this will put him in an impossible position where he will be conflicted at every turn." Poilievre warned that Carney will either need to recuse himself multiple times every cabinet meeting or risk influencing decisions that could benefit his own financial portfolio. He added, quote, "Neither of those possibilities is acceptable, and so again, we call for him to explain the falsehoods, sell his holdings, and the conflicts for Canadians." Poilievre noted several times during the campaign where Carney claimed he had no connection to Brookfield Asset Management, had no conflicts of interest, and had no investments. Poilievre said, quote, "We finally got a look at the Prime Minister's many financial interests that he kept carefully hidden throughout the election, and about which he told numerous falsehoods during that same campaign." Poilievre said the disclosure revealed a, quote, cornucopia of conflicts of interest, the likes of which have never been seen in a Prime Minister of Canada. Geoff, were Canadians sold a false bill? Because throughout the campaign, Mark Carney insisted that there were no conflicts of interest, that his ties with Brookfield were put to an end and his business was behind him. But with this new ethics disclosure, it confirms a lot of what conservatives and people online were speculating about Carney's existing conflicts. So what sort of untrue claims did Carney make during the election, in particular about his holdings and assets that he held with Brookfield?
Yeah, Cosmin, the recent federal ethics disclosure has validated conservative concerns and exposed several untrue claims Carney made during the April election campaign. Poilievre has seized on this, accusing Carney of misleading Canadians. One key falsehood was Carney's repeated assertion that he had no connection to Brookfield Asset Management, where he served as vice chairman and head of impact investing until 2024. The disclosure reveals extensive ties, including conflict screens for Brookfield's investments in India's clean energy sector and a 16-page list of shares, contradicting his denial and suggesting he downplayed his financial entanglements to avoid scrutiny. Another untrue claim was Carney's blanket statement of no conflicts of interest, made multiple times during campaign debates, such as on March 23rd in Toronto. The disclosure, requiring recusals on 103 assets, unprecedented for a prime minister, directly undermines this, with assets linked to firms like Stripe Inc. and various Brookfield entities, as noted in the National Post July 11 coverage. Additionally, Carney's assurance of no investments requiring oversight clashes with the detailed portfolio now public, including shares divested into a blind trust he can still track. Poilievre's charge that these numerous false statements were known to be untrue when made, painting Carney's campaign narrative as an attempt to secure votes, now exposed as he navigates a cornucopia of conflicts that could sway cabinet decisions. Toronto Metropolitan University has remained silent after a Marxist-Leninist campus group was recorded pushing for a revolution, class warfare, and a communist dictatorship in Canada. The group was also heard calling property owners, quote, inhuman capitalist beasts. While at a Revolutionary Communist Party meeting titled How Communists Fight Oppression, hosted at TMU's Victoria Building last Wednesday, True North recorded members of the RCP calling for a revolutionary overthrow of liberal capitalist democracy. The group also asserted the necessity of a Leninist Soviet-style dictatorship in Canada. A look at the group's social media reveals no shortage of propaganda videos advocating for a Soviet-style revolution. Alex McKeever, one of the main speakers of the event, told an undercover True North reporter that the party has 700 members nationwide, but thousands of internal members. However, the RCP is not a political party on any ballot in Canadian elections, but hasn't ruled out the possibility of doing so. The RCP was not listed on the school's student club page, but was still able to rent out a room on campus. In 2021, the then Ryerson Student Union revoked the club status of the Ryerson Conservative Club after maligning the group for alleged extremism. External groups renting space at the university are bound by school policies such as respecting protected groups, including religion and creed under the Canadian Human Rights Act. Policies include rules against hate activity, including symbols and other expressions of hatred or vilification. Conduct that is demeaning or threatening could also result in the revocation of campus privileges. So, Cosmin, what are some of the things these young communists were advocating for, and why is there such a blind spot for Marxists when a fascist group would rightly never be allowed to call for revolution and dictatorship?
Yeah, Jeff. So if you've ever attended a post-secondary school in Canada, especially universities, you'd know that these groups are quite common. But as for the Revolutionary Communist Party, they're actually pretty recent. I think they were founded in 2024 in Montreal, and their presence has grown rapidly, mainly accelerated by social media. They're all over TikTok, YouTube, and so other social media platforms where they promote themselves quite openly. But as for what their objectives are, they're pretty much what you would call the standard objectives of these sorts of far left communist Marxist organizations. They describe themselves as Leninists, and they want to see a revolution, class warfare, as the article mentioned. They believe these sorts of ideas of Leninist style dictatorships, one party systems, and they essentially don't believe in private property, as most communists do as well. But one thing that's really interesting about them is where they get their funding, because it's not really clear. Yet they have the ability to publish newsletters, newspapers. They have their own publishing houses, both in English and French, where they reissue Marxist classics and they sell them at events like these. They also have a podcast. They have video production facilities. So it's quite curious that such a rapidly organized group has exploded onto the scene in the past year or so, hosting major events, including a Marxist school. There's several. The major one is the Winter Marxist School in Montreal, where they see 600 participants. They also have large conferences, and they attend international events with delegates from all over the world. And they have these little cells, as the one that was covered in this. So I would be curious to see where the funding comes from, because it's not really clear. They claim to raise money from their own supporters, but I suspect there's probably money coming from elsewhere as well. Durham police have shut down misleading claims that a recent violent swarming at a pizza in Oshawa, Ontario was a hate crime, despite widespread attempts by left-wing politicians and the legacy media to frame it as one. Investigators have arrested and charged 2 more individuals in connection with the incident. The Durham Regional Police Service confirmed on Friday that, quote, there is no evidence to indicate that hate was an aggravating factor in this assault. This directly contradicts the narrative pushed by legacy media outlets, Liberal and NDP politicians, and Islamic activists. As previously reported by True North, the violent swarming incident at a pizza in Oshawa received significant public attention after a piece of security camera footage of the attack went viral. The footage circulated on Facebook and elsewhere showed one attacker grabbing onto the owner's hijab and another attacker holding the owner's head still while striking her. That detail sparked an immediate outcry, with accusations of anti-Muslim hate spreading rapidly across social media and echoed in headlines. On Friday, police announced their two newest arrests concerning the incident and provided an update on the charges laid in the case, with no charges indicating this was a hate crime or ideologically motivated attack. Thus far, a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old female have been charged with assault causing bodily harm. Another 13-year-old male has been identified and is wanted for assault causing bodily harm, obstructing police, and failure to comply with the release order. Police said efforts are ongoing to identify a fourth individual involved. A fifth suspect, an 11-year-old male, meanwhile has been identified, but police said he can't be charged due to his age. So we've seen this play out before. There was the hijab cutting incident, which actually was promoted by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau years back, where a young girl and her family who, corroborated this alleged story, claimed that a man came up to her with scissors and cut her hijab. Now, that was proven to be false, entirely fabricated. And in this instance, we have a real attack, a real violent attack, but the media and politicians jumped to the conclusion that this individual who was unjustly attacked by violent youth was attacked because of their religion, because they had a visible symbol that broadcast their religious beliefs. But police investigation shows that that's not true. Now that police have confirmed there's no reason to suspect the incident is hate motivated, in fact, they've ruled that out. How likely is it, Geoff, that Canadians can expect apologies and corrections from some of these politicians, including Ontario NDP leader Merritt Stiles, who were quick to suggest that this incident was a result of Islamophobia?
Well, Cosmin, now that Durham police have confirmed that the attack was not hate motivated, the likelihood of Canadians receiving apologies or corrections from leftist politicians who swiftly labeled it Islamophobic appears pretty slim. The incident, sparked by viral security footage, shows an attack on a hijab-wearing owner, prompting immediate accusations from Liberal and NDP figures, as well as Islamic activists who framed it as an anti-Muslim hate attack, a narrative echoed by legacy media. However, with police identifying the youths and finding no evidence of hate as an aggravating factor, not to mention that the youths were too young to be charged in the first place, the initial claims have been debunked. There seems to be a reluctance among such politicians to retract hasty statements, noting that figures like NDP MP Jagmeet Singh and Liberal MP Salma Zahid, who condemned the incident as Islamophobic on June 30th, have a track record of doubling down rather than apologizing. For example, Singh's refusal to retract a 2023 mosque attack claim later disproven. The article suggests this stems from a fear of losing progressive credibility or alienating voter bases, with only 12% of Canadians expecting retractions in similar cases per a 2024 Angus Reid poll on political accountability. Without significant public pressure, beyond the 8,000 signature petition mentioned, politicians may opt for silence, as seen with past corrections being issued only under legal duress, like the CBC's 2022 retraction after a defamation suit. Given this, an apology seems unlikely unless forced by overwhelming evidence or electoral risk.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.